What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video previewing Super Bowl 56. The Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford taking on Joe Burrow, and the Cincinnati Bengals. In this video, I determine who is better. Which NFL team is more talented? We take a look at every positional group from offense to defense, special teams, and of course coaching to determine the more talented team playing in Super Bowl 56. A lot of the times I make these videos and whoever ultimately gets the nod for the more talented team ends up winning the big game. So, before I give you the team that I believe is more talented and break down every position on both sides of the football, make sure that you do spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. And also get in that comments and you know what to do. Let me know which team you believe is more talented. Which team do you like more in terms of the roster? Let me know in the comment section below. And let's get started breaking down which team is more talented. Let's kick it off with the most important position on the football field, and that is the quarterback position. We have Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow. This one is challenging because I love both of these quarterbacks. I think both of them have incredible skill sets, and I have so much respect for both of their games. I've always been a massive fan of Matthew Stafford. I believe where Matt Stafford has the edge on Joe Burrow is his right arm. His arm strength is out of this world. It is quite honestly one of the strongest arms we have ever seen, not just in this era, but any NFL era. And that means that Matthew Stafford can make any throw on a football field. Deep, intermediate, short, left, right, center, it doesn't matter. You want to place that football into a tight window, Matthew Stafford is your guy. But if you want a guy that is precise, that gets rid of the football right on the money and is money accurate, then you want Joe Burrow. So it's a real tough decision, but ultimately, I've got to give the nod to Joe Burrow in this matchup, and the reason I will is because I think he's had an overall better season. When you're talking about MVP candidates, a lot of people will bring up Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and then Joe Burrow. He was PFF's top graded quarterback, and not for no reason. He was very consistent in terms of his accuracy. He rarely misses a ball. You'll see some inconsistencies with Matthew Stafford here and there with accuracy, but Joe Burrow is on the money each and every time. Nobody's better throwing into tight situations, tight windows, down the field, over the middle of the field. And Joe Burrow has that intangible factor that is the belief of why people think they can win this Super Bowl. That with Joe Burrow, no game is ever over, no game is too big, and no opponent is too good for the Bengals to overcome because of the leadership, because of the confidence, because of the swagger that Joe Burrow brings to the Cincinnati Bengals. So Matthew Stafford is absolutely phenomenal, and I love the guy, but if we're talking about current form, you've got to give the nod to Joe Burrow. Now let's move to the backfield, the running back position. Running back, I also like to intertwine the running game in general for both sides, and this one's real tight because I think Joe Mixon is a better running back than Cam Akers or Sony Michel or whichever running back the Rams throw out there. But I also do believe that the Rams might have the slightly more consistent rushing attack. Then again, I've seen Joe Mixon finish some football games like he did versus the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship. And I've always been a massive Joe Mixon fan, and that's why I'm going to go with the Bengals here as well at the running back position. Don't get me wrong, the Rams do maybe have one more layer of depth than the Bengals do. I'm not a huge P. Ryan or Captain America fan, Chris Evans here, but Joe Mixon is just too much. I just love his skill set. I love his patience as a runner. I love his ability in terms of his vision as a runner, to jump cut, find holes that aren't there, to deal with bad offensive line play, to deal with just lackluster things around him and overcome and be able to make big splash runs or game-sealing runs. His ability out of the backfield, I feel, is very underrated. His hands are super consistent and some of the top in the league at his position. He made an incredible one-handed catch in the playoffs. I really like Joe Mixon. I think he is an elite running back in this league. I will give the edge to the Bengals. That's not to say that I don't like what I've seen from Cam Akers coming off the injury. His explosive ability is certainly a factor here. He is a dual threat back. He does have burst through the hole that I think is pretty impressive and gives an extra gear to this offense. Sony Michel has proven to be clutch in these games, in these situations, especially back in his days with New England. And he's just very reliable in all facets of the game, especially pass protection and between the tackles. I respect all these runners, but I've got to give it to the lone elite guy, and in my opinion, that is Joe Mixon. The wide receiver and tight end position, this is maybe the most stacked, and I don't even know if I want to say maybe. This is certainly the most stacked position in this football game. We have on one side, one sideline, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, and Van Jefferson on top of Tyler Higbee at the tight end position. And then on the opposite sideline, we have Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and CJ Uzomah. So this is a really loaded field at wide receiver and tight end. Personally, I like the Bengals and what they offer a little bit more, and that is really difficult to say because Cooper Kupp has been borderline unstoppable. But if there has been another receiver out there that has been just as unstoppable as Cooper Kupp, it might be Jamar Chase, the rookie record for receiving yards. So you're dealing with two historic seasons in this football game, and some people say that wide receivers don't matter. Those people are idiots, in my opinion. Odell Beckham, I think, is slightly better than T. Higgins at this point in T. Higgins' career, although T. Higgins has had some very nice games, including the last couple in the playoffs where he's been a big part of their offense. But I think Odell's ceiling is slightly higher with what he can offer in a big-time matchup. We saw that in the NFC Championship game. He is one of the lone receivers, I feel, outside of the top two where you could just line him up on the outside, on the perimeter, one-on-one with any of these corners, and he'll beat them and he'll make consistent plays. T. Higgins sometimes can struggle against man coverage. He's a better jump ball guy. He's not quite the separator or the route runner that OBJ can be. And then you've got the third option. I think Tyler Boyd is honestly just a better, more well-rounded, more explosive version of Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's a reliable possession receiver who consistently makes plays and you can rely on him. I just don't think he's Tyler Boyd, who has proven to be a near 1,000-yard receiver in most of his seasons with Cincinnati, and now has taken a backseat to the younger guys, but is still very reliable, very gritty, tough over the middle of the field, and can make some key third down and red zone catches for this team. The tight end position, I think, is fairly even. I think Higbee's the better, more explosive player, especially after the catch, than CJ is. But I do look at him, CJ, that is, Uzomah, and I feel he's a little bit underrated and has made some nice plays. I would also say that him being injured going into this game probably gives him a little bit of a downside that I'm not sure exists with Tyler Higbee and the Rams. But yeah, this one is tough to call, and I couldn't blame you for going either way. But I just like the three trio receivers of the Bengals, and I think that is the position group that is probably the strongest in this entire game. Now let's move to the big boys up front protecting their quarterbacks. For Matthew Stafford, I think he has the much more reliable pass protection between the two quarterbacks as he's been sacked far less. And I believe that just consistent pressure has been something that hasn't always been there for opponents against the Rams. I think the Rams do a very good job of protecting their offensive line through scheme, through play action, through the running game, and through adding extra protectors for Matthew Stafford when he takes those deep shots down the field. But when you look across this five-man unit, you've got some very good players led by Andrew Whitworth, who's still playing at a high level at his really advanced age into his 40s. Overall, though, they just play very good as a unit. They're a little bit more finesse than physical, but I do think that their ability to move and their ability to set up runs in their zone run scheme is extremely impressive. I think all around they are the much better unit than Cincinnati, and I can't really sugarcoat that anymore. I feel like the Rams as an offensive line have been one of the more consistent over the last few years, and that has certainly helped Matthew Stafford's transition from Detroit to LA. Just more consistent, reliable pass protection for him to step up and make those throws. On the other hand, Cincinnati, it definitely actually hurts Joe Burrow and his capacity to make plays, because at times you see him trying to get rid of the ball early and take his check down maybe earlier than he should, because he's worried about the pocket breaking down. And even if the pressure isn't there on that given play, it's going to impact the way that he plays. So overall, it's more of a interior problem than it is an exterior tackle problem for Cincinnati, as their tackles aren't too bad, but the interior line has been a disaster in moments and has certainly imploded their ability to pass or run the ball. And that is where I get a little bit anxious for how they're going to be able to consistently protect Burrow in this game, consistently run the ball in this game. It's a little bit hit or miss dependent on the offensive line play, but if they can play a good game here, that is certainly going to help the Cincinnati Bengals' chances of winning this game. So I'll also finish with this. I think a lot of people think the Bengals' offensive line is like the worst or one of the worst in the game, and I'll just say this much. Joe Burrow also does them no favors in holding on to the ball and taking sacks. It's not only the offensive line's fault for why the sack numbers are so high, so don't get too crazy about that. But I've got to give the decisive edge to the Los Angeles Rams on this one. Now let's move to the defensive side of the football, to the defensive line. This is obviously the Los Angeles Rams, and there's no way around it, no debate about it. I like the Bengals and what they can do and what they can be. Trey Hendrickson has been arguably the best free agency signing of 2021 and the biggest impact on his defense, getting after quarterbacks, being a vicious, relentless pass rusher, but also a very reliable run defender to set the edge. He's relentless, but he's also very powerful. I've seen him just stand up tackles with one arm at times and be able to contain the edge, run down quarterbacks with his athleticism. He's just proven to be a very reliable every down edge player for the Bengals, something that I wasn't exactly certain he was in New Orleans. He is a standout. DJ Reader is a standout in terms of his run defense. He probably is the best run defender in this game on defense for the Bengals or for the Rams. His ability to just clog the middle and make plays behind the line of scrimmage and take on double teams is essential to the Bengals defense. On the flip side, you got Sam Hubbard on the edge, who's a consistent player, very smart, can blitz, can drop back in coverage occasionally, or just rush the passer, and he's very reliable against the run. He's just a very nice player. I would compare him to a similar guy like Rob Ninkovich, that type of player, but I don't really see him as a game changer. And then also on the inside, you've got to deal with BJ Hill, who got his hand on an interception from Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship. Huge play for them, and he's more known for his run defense, but has been a great addition from the Giants. Those four are very impressive. Obviously, no Larry and Ogunjobi here, and I don't think that the Bengals' depth is quite as impressive as the Rams. When you look at the Rams, the reason I picked them is, one, they've got the best defensive lineman in all of football, in Aaron Donald, who's a dominant force who has to be doubled and respected on every single snap. You know about Aaron Donald. I don't have to talk too much about him. Von Miller is a monster still. He's actually turned his game up a ton. In coming to the Rams. It's almost like he knew it was the playoffs. He wanted another ring, and he said, you know what? I'm going to turn this up a notch. And that's exactly what he's done. He's turned into prime Von Miller this playoff run, and we'll see if he can do that again in the playoffs. His ability to set the edge versus the run has always been there, but his bend off the edge is some of the most impressive I've ever seen in pro football history, and he's still got it. On the other side, Leonard Floyd is one of the most underrated football players in the NFL because he's very good in all facets of what the Rams ask him to do. He can drop back in coverage. He can defend the run. He can get his hands on the football with his athleticism and his length, and he's a good pass rusher. And he's an excellent number 3 pass rusher. So Leonard Floyd needs to be respected as a guy that can play linebacker or edge A'Shawn Robinson's been an unsung hero versus the run for this team since losing Sebastian Joseph Day, and just the overall depth of Gaines and all these other guys that mix in has been extremely impressive for this defensive line. Pass rush, run defense, very solid, and they rely on this front four to stop the run a lot because oftentimes they're playing lighter boxes. Moving to the second level for Super Bowl 56, this is probably the most challenging pick. Not because of the talent, but because of the lack of talent here. I don't really see a ton of talent on either side for the Bengals or the Rams at linebacker, which I think speaks to where the game is at in terms of defense. I think linebacker has been the most undervalued position in terms of teams are just not spending money on it, and they're not thinking it's a big deal. A lot of defenses, and some of the better defenses, don't have a lot of marquee linebackers, and their money isn't spent there. And I look at both sides, and I could see an argument for both sides. I would go with the Bengals, though. I think they rely on their linebackers more, and I do think Logan Wilson is the standout amongst both teams. He's good in coverage, especially. He came down with a lot of interceptions this year. I think he's got very good range and instincts and intelligence, and I do think he's so integral to what they do in the middle of the field in coverage. So I'm going to say Logan Wilson and the Bengals are going to get the edge here. But in any given game or day, I could see the Rams outperforming them at this position, and it wouldn't be a shock. The secondary is really tough for this one because I think Jalen Ramsey is by far the best player on either side, but the depth is kind of clear and obvious to the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's kind of like, what do you want here? What is your cup of tea? Do you want to go with the shutdown number one corner who's obviously the most talented? Darius Williams is a decent corner as well, and they've shown a capacity to have guys step up and play big throughout these playoffs where you're like, who's this guy, or who's that guy, or who's Scott, or Eric Weddle? What are you talking about? Like, and then you got Taylor Rapp, who's been hurt and in and out of the lineup, and so I could see you picking the Rams because of Ramsey and the chess piece that he offers to give the flexibility of the secondary. But I think what the Bengals have been able to do throughout the playoffs, pick off Ryan Tannehill multiple times, slow down Derek Carr at the end of the game, make key plays and big plays, and then in the AFC Championship, completely confuse Patrick Mahomes, who was on fire in that Bills game the game before. I think Cincinnati deserves the nod here. I do. Jesse Bates is phenomenal. I think he's one of the best center field free safeties in football, bar none. He has great range, great athleticism, very good ball skills. Made that key play late in the game last AFC Championship, in the AFC Championship. Von Bell is really, really good, and he's relied on to both be a run defender and a coverage guy, man and zone, and he's kind of really essential to what they do versus the run, to play as that extra guy in the box. The cornerback position's super underrated. Mike Hilton's one of the best nickel players as a run defender and coverage player, and blitzer even. And then you've got Awuzie, Eli Apple. These guys do a good job. Guys like Trey Flowers have stepped up as role players. I think Cincinnati has a lot of depth and a lot of players on very affordable contracts that I've been extremely impressed with. And I just think that Cincinnati's staff on defense does a very good job of putting these guys in the right place to succeed, and I think they have succeeded, especially at the safety level. So Cincinnati is going to get my vote for the secondary. And then we're going to go to special teams, the third phase of the game. Special teams, I do think that the Rams are the better overall special teams unit. I think that McPherson is the better kicker, and there's almost no doubt about that. But I look at the consistency of special teams that the Rams have offered for the last 4 or 5 years under McVay, and they have just thoroughly been impressive from a coverage standpoint, from a return standpoint, from a punting Johnny Hekker standpoint. And then Gay is a very reliable, 45 yards and in type of kicker. He's not the range that McPherson is, but everything that the Rams do offer from that standpoint is impressive, and they're always well coached. I do think Cincinnati could get the edge here because of the kicker alone, but I just think all the other areas of special teams are, in my opinion, favoring the Rams. So I would give the Rams the slight special teams edge, even though the kicker edge is clearly to McPherson and the Bengals. Lastly, the coaching. The head coach, Sean McVay versus Zach Taylor. Now that this is a Super Bowl, you've also got to take into account Super Bowl experience in general. Clearly, it's Sean McVay. From a coaching perspective, I think the DCs are both very good and have done a very good job this year. I think Big Lou in Cincinnati is probably my favorite of the two, but Raheem Morris also deserves his respect for taking, Brandon Staley's scheme and defense and molding it into his own creative way. And the offenses, I think, do a good job of helping their quarterbacks and scheming up plays and offenses. And a lot of that falls on Zach Taylor, falls on Sean McVay. But I do think it's McVay. He is in a lot of ways, the master to the student. And I think it's his moment to prove in this Super Bowl that the first experience is behind him and that he's a better, improved coach. I also just love his presence as a coach. I think he's a great leader from that standpoint. So that is where I stand on every position group, and those are my votes for every position group. Again, guys, let me know in the comments where you stand. Now it's decision time. Who am I going with? So let's quickly sum it up. On the offensive side of the football, the quarterback position, Cincinnati. Running back, Cincinnati. Wide receiver, tight end, Cincinnati. That's 3. Offensive line, I'm going with the Rams. And coaching, I am going with the Los Angeles Rams. So 3-2 on the offensive side of the football. Then we look at defense and special teams. Defensive line goes to the Rams. Linebacker goes to the Bengals, so it's now 4-3 Bengals. Secondary goes to the Bengals, so it's 5-3, and then ultimately special teams 5-4. So maybe in a shocking upset here in terms of talent on these rosters, which a lot of people would say it's the Rams, and from a surface level perspective, they certainly have more superstars, but when you break it down into position groups, maybe it's just because of how good the Bengals are at the skill positions on offense, which is really where they get the edge. Defense more so belongs to the Rams, but I think that the unbiased approach is going with who I picked at every position group. So I've got to give you that the Bengals are the better team here, and I'm not even sure if that's correct, but we'll find out at the Super Bowl. This is why this stuff is fun. This is a fun little exercise to get us into the mind of the game and into Super Bowl 56. So let me know where you stand. Which team is more talented in this game? Break it down by position group and let me know. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Gronk, spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more Super Bowl 56 content. Peace.